Hello all, I hope you are well today. The other week, Nerdrotic did a fantastic video in which he highlighted the absurdity of the new woke Lord of the Rings Amazon series.
Special thank you to my guests, the Fellowship of Influencers, Chanel, Joel, and Kelsey. We're getting like more diversity, much more diversity, being inclusive, representation, black elf, female dwarf. Wow. Never saw people of my color. So amazing.
Women in it, women, more female representation. I wasn't represented, my disability, my queerness wasn't represented. I'm a girl, Galadriel.
Yeah, I love Galadriel.
Galadriel. I'm already obsessed.
Stunning and beautiful. Corruption and manipulation. Corrupt people. Corrupt and be like, I can change him. She like, and I was like for like. And it's like.
In the famous words of J.R.R. Tolkien, evil cannot create anything new, only corrupt and ruin what good forces have invented or made. And it seems like everywhere you look, there is corruption of Tolkien, even from the very foundations allegedly dedicated to his preservation, like the Tolkien Society, who have come out and held entire conferences on subjects such as Gondor in Transition, a brief introduction to transgender realities in The Lord of the Rings, injecting queer atheism into Tolkien's work, and analyzing the lack of femininity in dwarves. I'm sorry, but if you are unable to enjoy fantasy in which every single species of 21st century gender dysphoria does not exist, and in which women are not permitted to be #girl bosses, then perhaps it's just best you avoid the genre altogether. Also, just the Tolkien Society suck in general. A few months ago, someone made an endearing post about Tolkien on Twitter, and they responded by claiming they had copyright to the image they used, and how dare this individual publish it in this innocuous manner to say happy birthday. Naturally, their nitpicking response was memed into oblivion. Now, it's pretty easy to dunk on Amazon and the Tolkien Society for taking wild liberties with the man's work, but knowing that Tolkien would not have wanted a bunch of bougie progressive influencers calling Sauron their bad boy bae, that's the easy part. So rather than what did Tolkien not believe, I think the better question here is, what did Tolkien believe? What were his actual politics? It's not like good old John Ronald Rowell was tweeting out hot takes about World War II or the British government or whatever would have trended on Twitter if it existed when he was alive. In fact, and I swear this was possible in an age before the internet, he doesn't seem to have publicly opined on politics at all, which has led a lot of people to think Tolkien didn't have opinions on it, an ambiguity that progressives have taken full advantage of.
At the end of the day, Tolkien died in the 70s. So it's up to us, to basically step our game up and see how his works can respond through the world that they created to the challenges of today.
But if they took 2 minutes to read his private letters, they would know Tolkien was far from a fence-sitter and has politics that would be very applicable to today, but which I would never expect to come from this man. Let's put it this way. If you think that J.K. Rowling is leading in the cancelled fiction authors department, had Tolkien lived another 50 years, the reaction to his hot takes would have granted him that crown in mere minutes. That is, unless H.P. Lovecraft joined the race. Do not ask me his cat's name. Anyways, before we jump into Tolkien's radical politics and letters to his son, I wanted to give a quick thank you to a brand new sponsor of this channel, Aura. I want you to think about the most recent social media quiz that you've seen circulating. Maybe you've even answered one. It perhaps looked something like this. You'll probably notice a trend. It reveals personally identifiable information about yourself, often information used in password recovery on popular sites. When we think about phishing scams, we often think about the classic Nigerian prince emails claiming that we're a long-lost family member they conveniently owe $6 billion to. But the truth is, hacking and information phishing has become a vastly different beast that has adapted to our modern skepticism. In 2020 alone, American consumers lost $56 billion due to identity theft scams, which is why I am excited to be partnering with Aura to help you protect yourselves. Aura is identity theft protection, fraud monitoring, a VPN, password management, and antivirus software all combined into one easy-to-use app. Aura will literally monitor the dark web for your email, passwords, social security numbers, and notify you within 24 hours if they have been compromised, so you can change your information and protect yourself. With fraud, every second matters. And the best part? Aura has offered my audience a free 2-week trial of their app if you sign up through my personalized link today, aura.com/Lauren Southern. In the era of digital identity, nothing will be more valuable than anonymity. Okay, so was J.R.R. Tolkien this diverse progressive king so many are rewriting him to be today? Well, on one hand, he was one of history's most famous African writers, and an orphan. I suspect any work written by an African orphan would be widely praised by progressive media today. That is until they discovered that white people can be African too, and males, orphans who have difficult lives. Worse yet, Christian. After Tolkien's parents passed away, he was put under the care of a priest and grew up to become quite close to his faith as a Roman Catholic, and quite close to many conservative Christian scholars as well, like C.S. Lewis. In simple terms, yes, it would appear Tolkien leaned more conservative, some would even say reactionary. But if you read more of his writings and want to apply modern-day terminology, it is more accurate to say Tolkien was a card-carrying resident of Ancapistan, and not the kind of anarchist who smokes weed and pretends to be part of Antifa, the kind who thinks Pinochet did nothing wrong, the kind of person who would throw woke Amazon employees out of a helicopter for saying tax the rich is a good idea. You may very well think I'm exaggerating, or joking at this point, but the only thing I am guilty of is perhaps putting too much emphasis on one letter of his, but it remains a very real letter. A letter in which Tolkien explained how he literally wanted enforced anti-statism. My political opinions lean more and more to anarchy, philosophically understood, meaning abolition of control, not whiskered men with bombs, or to unconstitutional monarchy. I would arrest anybody who uses the word state, in any sense, other than the inanimate realm of England and its inhabitants, a thing that has neither power, rights, nor mind, and after a chance of recantation, execute them if they remain obstinate. I want to leave room here to say Tolkien was being cheeky, hyperbolic, perhaps, by suggesting execution as a way to enforce the non-aggression principle, but regardless, his hatred of the government is a very consistent theme in all of his letters. The proper study of man is anything but man, and the most improper job of any man, even saints who at any rate were at least unwilling to take it on, is bossing other men. Not one in a million is fit for it, and least of all, those who seek the opportunity. From here he goes on a long rant about how everyone sucks, from medieval kings to ancient Greece, even calling Alexander the Great a boob, and then just full-on flies into this. But the special horror of the present world is that the whole damned thing is in one bag. There is nowhere to fly to. Even the unlucky little Samoyeds, I suspect, have tinned food and the village loudspeaker telling Stalin's bedtime stories about democracy and the wicked fascists who eat babies and steal sledge dogs. There is only one bright spot, and that is the growing habit of disgruntled men of dynamiting factories and power stations. I hope that, encouraged now as patriotism, may remain a habit, but it won't do any good if it is not universal. Bruh, yes. He just said, the one upside to the world is when men bomb factories and power stations, and how that should remain a habit and be more universal, to stop the state from expanding. In other words, J.R.R. Tolkien would be looking at today's Canadian truckers and wondering why, instead of just sitting around honking, they weren't scouring the Shire of Justin Trudeau, or as Tolkien probably would have called him, Sauron the anti-white. No, seriously, look at this letter where Tolkien gives his thoughts on socialism. I am not a socialist in any sense, being averse to planning, as must be plain, most of all because the planners, when they acquire power, become so bad, but I would not say that we had to suffer the malice of Sharky and his ruffians here. Though the spirit of Isengard, if not Mordor, is of course always cropping up, the present design of destroying Oxford in order to accommodate motor cars is a case. But our chief adversary is a member of a Tory government, but you could apply it anywhere these days. Firstly, if you don't know who Sharky is, that's what Saruman called himself when he took over the Shire. Yes, this happens in the books, and they cut it from the movies. And Saruman is literally who Tolkien uses to describe his political enemies. And apparently, it doesn't matter which side of the aisle you're on, socialist, Tory, whatever, if you're in government, you're all Uruk-hai to Professor Tolkien. But for some, even Uruk-hai was too good. If you're a communist, you're just a straight-up orc. Here's another letter. There is no symbolism or conscious allegory in my story. Allegory of the sort, 5 wizards equals 5 senses, is wholly foreign to my way of thinking. There were 5 wizards, and that is just a unique part of history. To ask if the orcs are communists is to me as sensible as asking if communists are orcs. That there is no allegory does not, of course, say there is no applicability. In other words, just because I didn't think of it at the time doesn't mean it's not true. And before you go jumping down my throat and saying, well, that means Tolkien could have written a series that involves transgenderism and queerness and all the rest of it, but just not thought of it at the time, just like these communist orcs. Well, let's talk about his views on sex. Once again, in something that could only be managed in the pre-internet era, it is hard to find Tolkien saying anything publicly about sex, to the point that Google search results up to the 5th page show you almost nothing. Yet, if you do the reading, which no one does, even Tolkien scholars apparently, you will find him talking plenty about his views on relationships. In fact, he had fiery back and forths with C.S. Lewis in which he felt Lewis was too liberal with his views of divorce, reiterating his thoughts that divorce was a cardinal sin. Wrong behavior, if it is really wrong on universal principles, is progressive, always. It never stops at being not very good, second best. It either reforms or goes on to third rate, bad, abominable. In no department is that truer than in sex. Anyone, in any case, can see that an enormous extension and facilitation of divorce in our days, since those of, say, Trollopian society, has done great social harm. It is a slippery slope to a promiscuity barely restrained by legality. If you are convinced that this already more extreme view than 99% of modern-day Republicans could ever be compatible with modern LGBTQ+2Y philosophy, I have a bridge to sell you, my friend. Tolkien was very red-pilled on gender questions, to say the least. He didn't even believe in the idea of male and female friendships unless in old age. In this fallen world, the friendship that should be possible between all human beings is virtually impossible between man and woman. The devil is endlessly ingenious, and sex is his favorite subject. He is as good every bit at catching you through generous romantic or tender motives as through baser or more animal ones. And worse, I have some bad news for all those boss babes out there who were so excited to see Galadriel in armor living her best life, a slay queen. Tolkien was not too fond of boss babes going out and living that OnlyFans cash money life. Galadriel might have given Gimli a lock of her hair, but other than that, her creator was firmly anti-simp, because Tolkien literally dunked on women who enjoyed casual sex and dominating men as abnormalities. You may meet in life, as in literature, women who are flighty or even plain wanton. I don't refer to mere flirtatiousness, the sparring practice for the real combat, but to women who are too silly to take even love seriously, or are actually so depraved as to enjoy conquests, or even enjoy the giving of pain. But these are abnormalities, even though false teaching, bad upbringing, and corrupt fashions may encourage them. So even daddy issues is not an excuse, apparently. Shall I go on? Tolkien has a very Jordan Peterson, even manosphere view on a lot of sex and gender issues, even believing women simply to be incapable of casual sex like men due to our biological and psychological differences, which pretty much puts the nail in the coffin for those trying to find transgender themes in his work, if he believes that. So, no. You don't get to take his work and apply how you felt his mood was at the time to the modern day simply because you were too lazy to actually look into his real beliefs, especially when the mood you are superimposing is antithetical to his values. I wanted to conclude this video with what I thought to be one of the most interesting bits of his letters, though, and that was when he wrote to his son in the last days of World War II, writing a solemn letter about how disappointed he was with the rest of Europe for celebrating the collapse of Germany. And no, I'm not about to drop some bombshell on you that Tolkien was secretly some Nazi lover. Quite the opposite. He has multiple letters mocking people for trying to confirm that he's Aryan, he refused to publish with Nazis, and overall was very consistent in his hatred of state overreach or power. But in this letter I'm about to read to his son, he showed something that I think encapsulates Tolkien and the stark difference between him and those who have bastardized his work on Amazon, more than the rest of these political tidbits. I have just heard the news. Russians 60 miles from Berlin. It does look as if something decisive might happen soon. The appalling destruction and misery of this war mount hourly. Destruction of what should, indeed is, the commonwealth of Europe and the world. If mankind were not so besotted, wealth, the loss of which will affect us all, victors or not. Yet people gloat to hear of the endless lines, 40 miles long of miserable refugees, women and children pouring west, dying on the way. There seem no bowels of mercy or compassion, no imagination left in this dark, diabolical hour. By which I do not mean that it may not all, in the present situation, mainly not solely created by Germany, be necessary and inevitable. But why gloat? We were supposed to have reached a stage of civilization in which it might still be necessary to execute a criminal but not to gloat, or to hang his wife and child by him while the orc crowd hooted. The destruction of Germany, be it 100 times merited, is one of the most appalling world catastrophes. Well, you and I can do nothing about it, and that should be a measure of the amount of guilt that can justly be assumed to attach to any member of a country who is not a member of its actual government. While the first war of the machines seems to be drawing to its final, inconclusive chapter, leaving, alas, everyone the poorer, many bereaved or maimed and millions dead, and only one thing triumphant: the machines. As the servants of the machines are becoming a privileged class, the machines are going to be enormously more powerful. What is their next move? All the love of your own father. Even after hating the Nazi regime, Tolkien could still see the individuals who suffered in Germany. Even after wanting the fall of Nazism, Tolkien saw the darkness in men's hearts who felt glee in destruction. Even after winning the war, Tolkien grieved at the tragedy rather than dance on the enemy's grave. There is absolutely nothing in common between Tolkien and the woke generation of Amazon's Lord of the Rings, who could never fathom such a feeling. They are the progenitors of modern cancel culture. The woke are vultures. They don't win any battles or feats. They feed on dying carcasses of once good and great nations or men in a fallen state, rip their eyes out while they're down, squawk and squeal on their bodies, laugh at the demise of friends and family alike so long as they're on the other side. Tolkien saw the fundamental corruption this would have on men's souls. The man could look upon Nazism and say, let's defeat it, but not gloat in the process. Today, the woke can't even look at someone's tweets from 10 years ago and not be spiteful or cruel. It's amazing in every way, from being anti-community organizing and planning on a socialist level, anti-state, to being totally anti-cancel culture to the most extreme levels. He is completely their antithesis. And I find it interesting that he ends his letter with millions dead and the only thing triumphant, the machines. What will be their next move? Tolkien would take one look at social media, one look at Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Amazon itself, and think the machines had eaten our souls. And he'd probably be right to an extent. So no. Sauron is not your woke bae, Galadriel is not some feminist hero, the elves are not transgender or gay or something. Hell, they can't even get divorced in Tolkien's mind. If you're gonna try and go around and just rewrite his work and his ideas, fine, so be it. But stop pretending you're doing it right. If you want to bastardize things for your own politics, just do it. But admit what you're doing, so Tolkien doesn't have to take the fall for your idiocracy. In the words of one of his heroes, who might as well have been talking to the woke people remaking The Lord of the Rings,
"Fool of a took! Throw yourself in next time and rid us of your stupidity."
Thank you all for watching this video. Huge thanks to my Subscribe Star members for being the best. We're going to do a live stream very soon. And be sure to hit like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the content of this video. I will see you all next time.